And we're back in the studio. This is episode 115 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this sunny, I don't know what's going on, sunny, it's not raining, Monday afternoon here in New York. If you're checking out episode 115 on the YouTube channel or enjoying the content, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you're joining me for this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same rule applies. Click like, subscribe, turn on those notifications. So I guess this will be Oscar's postscript, not necessarily specific to last night or any of the events, any of the winners and losers. Loser. I mean, it gets a little bit much where winners and losers. And I remember many years ago, Dustin Hoffman, 45 years ago, was it when he won for Kramer versus Kramer? He didn't like the idea of it being this kind of almost bloodthirsty competition that it had already turned into all of those years ago. And over time, there has been a move to try to go away from that and to treat it more like a celebration of Hollywood. But unfortunately, people are competitive in every field, and sometimes and especially at the producer level, where you had people spending tons of money on advertising over the years. And again, this is nothing new. This is going back decades we're talking about, well back into the 90s and even before, where you had these very brilliantly orchestrated marketing campaigns to try to collect the hardware, as opposed to just letting the work, cliche as this may be, speak for itself. But the idea is that regardless of who wins what, history always answers. And yes, such and such a movie winning Best Picture in a certain year, that's forever etched in time and in history. But the reality is, we are not going to like or dislike a particular film or see a film as better simply because it won a particular award, or see a performance as better, or special effects or costume design. And this is something that I maybe didn't quite get as a much younger person, and I understand now. But I touched on this the other day briefly, and this is all so subjective. And this is why we can get angry if a favorite movie didn't win, or in some cases did win, does win. But the truth is that history tells its own story. And 29 years ago, when Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption both more or less got their respective clocks cleaned by Forrest Gump in the big categories, that's what happened at that time. People like me, even 21-year-old me, if you had asked me the question, 3 decades hence, how are these movies going to be looked at? And I would have probably been pretty close to accurate when I said Forrest Gump will be judged as the least of these three. It doesn't make it a bad movie. It doesn't mean that it was not an important film, that it didn't show sides to American history that some people didn't know in this country. It's not really a movie. People can watch it overseas, but it is a very specific American film. And not really as rah-rah, yeah, way to go America, as it was read in some quarters. I mean, this is a movie that I could assess from multiple angles. It's kind of what I did in film school. This is what we were taught to do. And not just as far as film, but the way that we assess art in general. It's not just specific to the person. It's specific to the person at a specific time. And occasionally, your thoughts and feelings on a movie won't shift. It's one way to see if a film is truly great and has stood the test of time. And I would say that in its own way, Forrest Gump has stood the test of time. I love Tom Hanks's performance. First time I saw the movie in the summer of '94, and I watched the movie within the last year. I still love Tom Hanks's performance. I still think Bob Zemeckis' direction is immaculate. The way that, similar to James Cameron 3 years earlier in Terminator 2, the way that Zemeckis is able to almost seamlessly weave what at the time were pretty nervy special effects. He's able to weave them into the story in a way that is unobtrusive, and at no time, at least not for me, some people may have a different memory or a different experience, but at no time watching Forrest Gump, then or more recently, was I saying, green screen, green screen. It was seamless. Moments with, the young Tom Hanks, Lyndon Johnson, and all of that. I got to meet the president again. It still plays. At the same time, Pulp Fiction has lost none of its ability to amuse, to shock, to horrify, to entertain deeply. And another mark of a great movie is, especially a film with a structure like Pulp Fiction, a la Citizen Kane, for you film geeks out there, you never know what part of the movie you're up to. You might recognize the scene, but in the first 10 seconds of watching your normal narrative film, if you've seen it a dozen times, you know where you are. Oh, this is about an hour into the movie. I've seen Pulp Fiction more times than I can count, and if you airdrop me into a specific 10-second beat, I am not instantly going to know. I mean, I might know which story it is, maybe, but I'm not going to immediately say, oh, this is about 40 minutes into the movie. This is actually more like 2 hours. No, it's going to take me some time to reorient myself and figure out where the fuck are we. Now, I shot Marvin in the face. Oh, that's the Bonnie situation. I know this. Shawshank, you always know where you are if you are as familiar with that film as not just me, but many people that I know and people I follow and have followed on social media who have that in certainly their top 3 or top 5. But that is a case where, not to take anything away from what Bob Zemeckis, and I call him Bob because everyone calls him Bob. He's listed as Robert. I am a huge Robert Zemeckis fan. I love Back to the Future. I believe Back to the Future is the best film that Robert Zemeckis ever made. I will stand on that. I will go down on that hill. It doesn't mean that Forrest Gump is not a great film. Back to the Future is a better movie. Now, I will say that Frank Darabont has not made a better movie than The Shawshank Redemption, nor will not make a better movie. Shawshank Redemption is a nearly perfect motion picture, as is, I would argue, Pulp Fiction in its way. And neither one got an Oscar for Best Director or Best Picture, but it doesn't make the films any less viable. And I believe that history has shown that particular year, the Oscars got it wrong. Again, wrong, it's levels. It's from a subjective viewpoint. This is not like, oh, we graded them a 90 on the test and they should have gotten a 98. No, this is not just my opinion, your opinion. In this instance, it's literally the court of public opinion and how opinions shift over time. And you do see various years where the winner, you say, ooh, that was a mistake. How did this movie win over this movie? But even that is subjective. But you often don't know whether the Oscars got movies right or got winners right or wrong until decades later. Now, right away, in 1982, when Chariots of Fire won Best Picture in a pretty stupendous upset, because even though Chariots had gotten, and you can Google this too, unbelievable critical acclaim, because it was a British film, even though Sir David Putnam had the connection with Warner Brothers and all of that, it was not one of those movies that, oh my God, it's going to just come over here and kill it. It landed in the US and the reviews were through the roof. And that's part of the reason, as I mentioned, I saw it because both of my parents, independent of one another, had been told by friends, holy shit, you have to see this movie. Doesn't sound interesting. I know that. I said the same thing. Why do I give a shit about the British caste system? Why do I care about running for merry old England in 1924? Who cares? Exactly. But you watch this movie and you tell me that you don't care about the world of this story and the characters that inhabit this particular story. Now, history has not been as kind to 2 movies from that same year. On Golden Pond, which is okay, and I love Katharine Hepburn. I love Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda, one of my favorite people to ever work in Hollywood. What an incredible actor. He got so much across with quiet voice, a turn of the face, a smile, a scowl. There were very few people that were able to do what Henry Fonda did. You could say Gary Cooper, but you're already talking legends. I put Fonda above Gary Cooper. Hell, I put Fonda above any of his kids. I love Jane. Jane, as an actress, fucking great. But Henry Fonda was, to me, in a class by himself. But the movie On Golden Pond, and Katharine Hepburn, forget it. Most Oscar nominations, like she's up there with Meryl Streep. I think Meryl may have eclipsed her. On Golden Pond is not that good, even though Jane is in the movie. It's just okay. And Warren Beatty's Reds, which got enormous acclaim back then, and many people, I believe that Warren won Best Director, if I'm not mistaken. Many people said, well, it should win Best Picture. History has not been that kind to that movie. A friend of mine, we were just discussing this the other day, when he mentioned it. It's not something that I would have automatically thought of. But you go back to those Oscars, and I don't give a fuck. The only movie that I could see realistically having a shot in 2024 is Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I argued this point tooth and nail almost 3 decades ago at New York University. So 13, 14 years after those Oscars, I was maintaining, I don't give a shit what you say. Chariots of Fire is timeless. It's a period piece where they get the details exactly right. This is exactly how these particular people would behave. The movie is timeless. They got it. Well, Raiders of the Lost Ark is timeless too. That's a movie that, to me, despite the fact that I know there's so much material, there are articles on the internet pointing out, and I think it's one particular guy, or I'm not sure if it's literally a guy. It could be a guy, I don't know. But their entire process seems to be to point out how movies from decades ago are now problematic. No shit, Sherlock. We've just been saying this. Films can be a product of their time. It does not make them any less timeless. Because of an action that Indiana Jones takes at the 13-minute mark in a movie from 1981 does not invalidate the strength of the movie. Period. It doesn't. You can try to fight and argue and pretend that it does, but it doesn't. Because I've seen those movies backwards and forwards. And if you have to go out of your way to explain, but look what he does at 13 minutes and 15 seconds. Fine. Okay? Still a fucking masterpiece. I don't give a shit if this offends you in particular. This one moment does not invalidate the genius of Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford's extraordinary lead performance in that movie. I just read another one, speaking of Harrison, talking about how why Blade Runner, more than 4 decades later, no longer works. Yes, it does. Don't denigrate movies like Blade Runner, or heaven forbid, you're going to go after A Clockwork Orange. No shit. It couldn't be made today. I agree. Or, well, if it got made, it wouldn't be made with a studio logo like Warner Brothers. You could make it in the independent route, a movie like that. Oh, by the way, please don't remake A Clockwork Orange. Okay, end of lecture. But history always tells the tale. It doesn't matter what an individual interpretation, and this is a problem that I believe, as an older person now, when I say problem, I don't mean that it's the end of Western civilization. I'm not talking about that. But because so many different people have valid opinions, I can sit here and say this guy is wrong, but that doesn't mean that his opinion is invalid. It means I don't agree with it. But there are so many different pieces of data available to us. And we don't have to filter it out, but we have to consider the source and understand there are certain people who are going to shine a light on the best movie you've never seen. And then there are others who are almost going to try to move you off of the position that this particular movie didn't win an Oscar and should have, this movie won an Oscar and shouldn't have, or this movie, which is a sacred cow, is very problematic. Now, this is another series of arguments that I welcome. I love having these kinds of arguments. You want to ask me whether or not Dirty Harry is problematic? Yes, of course it is. It's 52 and a half years old. There are certain elements in this movie that would not be played exactly the same, but that's okay. A good debate about what culture would allow then versus now, which movie has gotten better with time, which is not as good. I would argue that 1971, or the movies released in 71, Best Picture, The French Connection, it's still good, but I don't think that movie plays as well today as Dirty Harry, which is much more stylish. And if you want to say over the top, as far as the violence is a little bit less believable in Dirty Harry, to me, than The French Connection. But if we're relitigating those Oscars, history has shown us that the best movie of 1971 is either Dirty Harry or A Clockwork Orange. This is another hill that I will go down on. Flip a coin. Just as if you want to say, would you flip a coin between Pulp Fiction or The Shawshank Redemption at the expense of Forrest Gump? Yes. But I'll tell you the other thing. It's just my opinion. And I love Forrest Gump. And I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. But for me, Chariots of Fire is unimpeachable. It is my movie. That is my favorite movie of all time. And I would always argue tooth and nail in favor of that movie. And as I mentioned a couple of weeks back, Ben Cross's performance as the closest that film has to a lead character, Harold Abrahams. That is an all-time great performance that history, for whatever reason, slept on. I'd rather, as they say, keep it positive and point out things that I consider to be exemplary that maybe are a little bit under the radar. And I'm certainly going to get into more of that as far as best movie you've never seen, most underrated film performances, and things and motion pictures and pieces of motion pictures, whether it's performance or art design or what have you, that history has slept on. But last night was a good night. I know it doesn't really matter if I can sit here and say it was a good night for Hollywood, but I mean as far as the general sense from movie fans is that a lot of the awards were given to the people who, and the groups of people who had earned it. And, Nolan winning for Oppenheimer. I guess what I'm saying is a decade from now, 2 decades from now, 3 decades from now, I am very confident in saying that just off of the initial reaction and my understanding of these things, nobody 3 decades from now is going to be saying, oh my God, how the fuck did Oppenheimer win Best Picture? What the hell were they thinking giving Christopher Nolan Best Director? Now, I don't go that far with, certain years. I can sit here and say that as much as I'm a huge fan of the late, great Jonathan Demme, that Silence of the Lambs was maybe the 3rd or 4th best directed film of its release year, 1991. You put a gun to my head. Do I think that Lawrence Kasdan's direction of Grand Canyon is as good or better? Yeah. Oliver Stone's JFK? Yeah. As much as a lot of that movie we know is hooey and gobbledygook, it doesn't take away from the unbelievable power of what Oliver Stone was able to do for huge chunks of JFK. Huge chunks. There's stretches of movie in that movie that are as good as anything I've ever seen in any movie. And I would argue that. I would go down on that hill. Terminator 2. If we're relitigating who should have won Best Director, James Cameron for Terminator 2. He wasn't even nominated. I mentioned it and I wasn't sure. Maybe he didn't. I was pretty confident he didn't. 33 years later, James Cameron's Terminator 2. If it's not the best film of 1991, it's in the top 3. And you will never convince me that his direction in Titanic is better than it is in Terminator 2, because it isn't. And Titanic, it is a movie that's problematic, where most people will agree, because the dialogue is very much 1997. There's a little bit of the old school stuff, and Victor Garber as Andrews, the shipbuilder, he keeps it real, and the actor who plays Ismay, and there's a lot of that. Bernard Maxwell? Bernard Lee? Bernard Hill. I get my Bernards mixed up. There's a lot of Bernards in history of movies, but the guy who plays the captain in Titanic, he keeps it real. The takeaway is, because I get so fired up talking about the Oscars, I don't so much have winners of years memorized, just as I remember a lot that I've read. And in many cases of the 90s, I remember watching live who won what. Unforgiven, which I've mentioned repeatedly. Nobody is saying take away Clint's Oscar because Unforgiven doesn't play, because Unforgiven was destroying sacred cows in 1992. It was laying waste to the conventional Western narrative. And John Ford had done it to some extent in the 50s in movies like The Searchers. But what Clint and the writer David Peoples, what he was able to do, he blew a hole through everything. and showing flawed characters who were nevertheless infinitely more relatable and more human than the guys think we're supposed to root for. Because if you have a story of a couple of outlaws and a sheriff, well, I mean, the sheriff is supposed to be the good guy. And in Unforgiven, it turns everything on its ear. That the way to win a gunfight is to simply not get overly scared and hope that your gun doesn't jam, your 1870s pistola doesn't jam at a big moment. The Oscars. Decades of arguments. And see, I enjoy it. I've never shied away because there are certain arguments. I hate arguing politics. Just so you know, I can't stand it. It doesn't mean I don't have strong opinions about a lot of topics, but I believe one thing that has really reduced productivity in this country is arguing with people on the internet. It could be about anything. It could be about fitness. One guy argues you have to have this much protein a day if you weigh this much, and another guy says you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and two people spend all day going back and forth. Much prefer this kind of back and forth in person. Tell me I'm crazy for my unabashed love of Chariots of Fire. Tell me I'm nuts. Unforgiven stole the Oscar from The Crying Game, or A Few Good Men, or Scent of a Woman, or Howard's End, or Chaplin. You love Robert Downey Jr.'s performance. Why didn't he win Best Actor? Well, I don't know. I love Al Pacino, but as I've said, Scent of a Woman is Al Pacino's second best performance in years and movies released in 1992 behind Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a more skillful performance there by Big Al, if you ask me. But it's all part of the fun. And I've never taken it too seriously. Yeah, I was disappointed in 95 when my guy, Quentin Tarantino, was so young then, hell, I was 21, when he didn't win for Pulp Fiction. But history has shown, generally speaking, Pulp and Shawshank, 1 and 1A, and this is where I don't really care. Because if you argue that you think that Shawshank is better, fine. You can argue that you think Forrest Gump is also better and that Pulp Fiction sucks. Also fine. When I say history, I just mean a general sense. And you look at the Internet Movie Database and the fact that Shawshank Redemption is consistently ranked in the top 5 all time. At one point, it was 1 and 2, back and forth with the original Godfather. It's not just a random movie that got nominated for 7 Oscars. It's one of the most beloved films ever, and history shows that. History doesn't lie. It doesn't mean our opinions have to change. We don't need to update our thoughts. We're allowed to like what we like. We're allowed to love what we love. It's the same idea. And another thing, when I was a kid, this doesn't have anything to do with the Oscars specifically. My dad, my dear old dad, Alan Philip Cohen, who I adored, may he rest in eternal peace and eternal cinema because he was such a big movie fan. My dad used to get frustrated with me because I watched the same movies over and over and over. At age 50, I'm telling you, dear viewer, watch whatever you want. Life is difficult enough. We know this. But if you have a movie or a series of movies that you love and it brings you joy and comfort, don't let anybody move you off of that. Just like if you stick to your guns that such and such a movie shouldn't have won this and this one won it, you're allowed to stick to your guns. Don't let groupthink move you from your position. 21-year-old me with 8 people hectoring me that Raiders of the Lost Ark should have won Best Picture over Chariots of Fire. Sorry, or in the immortal words of Mike Myers, thank you, no. Not thank you, next. Thank you, no. That's all. Stick to your guns. And, they say you don't have to take part in every single gunfight you're invited to. No need to get upset. Be passionate. Argue vociferously for your favorites. Your favorite Tom Cruise film is Night and Day. Fine. That's great. With me, without me. With me, without me. It's okay. I mean, it might be in my top 15 Tom Cruise films. It's fun. With me, without me. With me, without me. This is the guy. I'm the guy. I'm the guy. Yeah, Tom Cruise is the guy. Favorite Mission Impossible film is the first one, even though it doesn't have the crazy pyrotechnics. Also fine. You're entitled. You, especially in the era of streaming, you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want. And if that means that you continue to watch the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, or the OG Star Wars trilogy, or Indiana Jones, or Barbie, or Oppenheimer, whatever you want, whenever you want. Don't let anybody dissuade you from your strongly held beliefs, because this is movies. It's often an escape from the realities of life. Just enjoy. Have fun. Either way, history will tell us decades down the road that, holy shit, in 2040, Night and Day is the best movie of Tom Cruise's career. Didn't see that coming. That's it. You know? Movies are, for me, the greatest art form. And one that I've loved from the time I was 3, 4 years old. And my parents put on, I watched Grease in theaters. But from the first time I watched the movie Bugsy Malone, I think I was 3, I was mesmerized and riveted. And to get that kind of experience is a thing of beauty. To feel that pull where you almost start to forget that you're not taking part actively, you're simply watching. You're watching and you're enjoying, you're being moved, maybe to tears, maybe you're laughing your ass off. That's what movies can do. And it's easy to lose sight of that in this kind of high pressure, massively polarized society. It's okay to laugh, to cry, to hurl, as Wayne's World pointed out, as long as you have an emotional response, a la Blade Runner. It's a test designed to generate an emotional response. Make them laugh, make them laugh, make them laugh, or make them cry. What was the quote by Sid Caesar? Dying's easy, comedy is hard. Life's a tragedy. Life's a comedy to those who think, but a tragedy to those who feel. Whatever it is. However you want to apply that to your movie-going life, you don't need to justify it. It's simply what it is. And with that, we've reached the end of episode 115 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for now the third Oscars-themed episode in a row. If you're checking it out on the YouTube channel and haven't done so already, click like, subscribe, comment, and turn on those notifications. Or if you're checking it out on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same rule applies. Click like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 116 real soon. Peace.